The design process. 5 fundamental steps. I'm Catherine Fulford at the University of Hawaii at Manoa. The 5 fundamental steps. These ideas are from Type and Image by Philip B. Meggs. First is problem definition. Second, information gathering. Third, idea finding. Fourth, solution finding. And fifth, implementation. This is what we'll be discussing today. First is problem definition. One of the things you want to do is step outside of the box to find the perfect solution. One way to do this is to consider what your purpose is. Think about your overall audience, as well as your specific users. What are your goals, as well as any constraints that you may have. Next, you need to think about the function of the graphic. What are your objectives? How do you intend to use it? Is it designed to be standalone or part of a package? Next is your context. Where are you going to be using this? What's the environment like? For example, are people going to be doing this online? Are they going to be doing it on their mobile devices? That really becomes very important. Also, when are they going to use it? For example, is it going to be bright or low light? How long will they be using it? Any additional conditions? Is it free or for sale? Next is information gathering. First of all, again, you think about your audience. You need to figure out what kinds of methods you're going to use to find out more about your audience. You can survey them, you might interview them, or you might use focus groups. You also need to think about the data that you want. Demographics, for example, can be very important with visuals. What are their needs? And what are their opinions? Also, what is the organizational culture that this graphic will be used in? Content. Be sure to match your purpose to the function and the context. Look at the appropriate skill and knowledge level. Universal design means to design for as many people as possible, including those with visual or other impairments. Think about universal design with your text, your visuals, and your audio. Information gathering also includes looking at your image and thinking about matching it to the organization. For example, if you're designing something that has a logo in green, you would want to stick with that same color scheme. You also want to match to the users and the audience, so think about what interests them and what might get their attention. Also, you might want to look at whether you want to be more avant-garde or traditional. Who are your users and who is the organization? When you're designing, you want to do your best to make your design evergreen. In other words, the images and the information that you use will last a long time. You can use trendy images or information when it's something that's simple that won't last for a long time, perhaps a poster or a flyer. Idea finding. Vertical and lateral thinking. Vertical follows the most obvious or logical line, usually rather cliché, whereas lateral thinking is the unexpected and sideways thinking, something that's eye-catching and unique, such as this example for tropical. A mood is an emotional state. You want to match this feeling to the image that you have for your product or for your institution or company. It needs to meet the goal. It can be cheerful, daring, romantic, lively, peaceful, and many other things. Try looking up moods on the web and you'll find a multitude of resources. Theme. This is your central idea or motif. You should match it to the image of your product, as well as to the mood. It involves the use of color, layout, as well as images. Examples are tropical, western, environmental, mystery. Look up themes on the web as well, and you'll find lots of resources. Brainstorming. Be sure to prepare before the session. This is the time you'll use all of that research that you've been doing. Use the blue sky technique invented by Walt Disney. We'll talk about that more in a minute. Be sure to take turns talking and give everybody a chance. Make sure that you take notes. Then evaluate your ideas based on purpose, function, and context. Blue sky brainstorming. Have a time limit for each of the steps. First is the dreamer. You want to get all of your ideas down. No critiquing at this point, no show-stopping comments. The realist is the second part. This is where you organize, prioritize, and make a realistic plan. The spoiler is the next part. This is where you critique your plan together, you poke holes, and you become practical. Incubation. After brainstorming, do something else for a while. Avoid being obsessive over your project. Get some sleep, and then wake up and allow yourself to think over the project. Then get up and take notes. This is a great way to get ideas out of your head and into the project. Notation and thumbnails are a great way to help you find ideas. Keep notes on all the ideas you have. You may come back to them later. Paper and pencil thumbnails are underrated. It's a good idea to get away from the computer sometimes. Drawing skill is not necessary. All you need are rudimentary drawings. Now is time for synthesis, pulling all of the ideas together. This is when you can do some ocular reconnaissance. Go out and look at as much as you can based on your theme and mood. Survey other projects that have been done elsewhere. Inspect. Look deeply at the projects and see what aspects they have. Now is time to find a solution. There are many ways to represent the same idea. To find the best solution, it's a good idea to establish criteria. Review your previous steps for consistency. Match to your purpose, function, and context. Consider message, form and space, and resonance. Meggs provided these checklist questions to help you. Message. Do the elements and images convey the intended content? Does it match the audience? Is it positioned correctly relative to other messages? Is there any confusion or ambiguity? Is it legible from the intended distance? Do type and image come together as a cohesive message? Are the connotations appropriate? Form and space. Do the elements form a cohesive whole? Is the visual hierarchy clear and appropriate? Is the space used effectively? Are the scales between the parts effective? Do type and image function well together in the space? Is the visual structure ordered effectively? Does the viewer's eye move through the design in a desirable sequence? Resonance. Do the overall visual aspects express the essence of the subject? Are the images expressive and engaging? Do the typefaces have suitable connotations and design properties? Is there anything unusual that contributes to the design? Are there several levels of meaning? Does the design have the right tone for the audience and the subject? Do the colors and graphic elements add to or detract from the tone? When you have educational or instructional materials, you need solution finding with a purpose. Gagne's 9 events of instruction will help you do this. They are: gain attention, inform learners of the objectives, stimulate recall, present the stimulus, provide learning guidance, elicit performance, provide feedback, assess performance, and enhance retention and transfer. We'll cover each of these now. First of all, gaining attention. What you're trying to do in this step is excite and motivate the students to learn. What you'd like to try to do is link this to the subject matter itself, informing the learners of the objectives. Learners are all curious about what they're going to learn, wondering whether they're going to get a good grade, wondering what the expectations are, and sometimes being fearful that they won't do well. Presenting the stimulus. The stimulus is actually the materials themselves, but the idea is that we have something that students can respond to. Next is providing learner guidance. This is the step that you walk students through the lesson so that they will finally get it. Then they can perform by themselves. Eliciting performance. The more they practice, the better they become. Providing feedback is an essential part of Gagne's 9 events. It really helps when you can see your mistakes. Assessing performance is a critical step to make sure that both your instruction works well as that the student is learning what they need to learn. But it's important that the objectives match the way you practice. For example, the objective would be that the students need to learn to use a microscope. Their practice, because the microscope is brand new and very expensive, is only to have them peer through it once. And then the test is a worksheet having them fill out the parts of the microscope. These don't match, and the student, of course, is quite dismayed. So it's critical that these things match. If the objective is to have students use the microscope, then in their practice they must use it, and in their test they need to be tested on whether they use it properly. Enhancing retention and transfer is the last and most critical step. This is where you take the learning into the real world and help them transfer it. You want them to be able to use their new knowledge in as many ways as possible. Last but not least, in Meggs' 5 steps is implementation. Often we use usability testing to do this. This is where you create instruments to gather data from 5 users, one at a time. You analyze the data, you make revisions based on the data that you collect, and then you retest. And hopefully, through a series of revisions, you can perfect your design.